Courtney.
Wait, I'm Courtney too.
Yes, you are Courtney. We went over this, but you're Courtney from 2014.
Oh, right. Now I remember.
Okay, yeah. Well, hello. I'm Courtney 2015, and I'm here to talk to you about what climate change is and what educational institutions are doing about climate change with the help of Courtney 2014.
That's me.
Yes. Okay, well, let's get started. Courtney, why don't you tell me a little bit about what you think climate change is?
Well, I'm from Yakima, Washington, which is in the middle of the state. And to be honest, in Yakima, we don't really recycle. And don't tell anyone important, but you have to pay like $30 to recycle in Yakima, and that is like ridiculous. And so I don't pay for that. But like sometimes I recycle pop cans because there's this place in Yakima where you can like recycle them and get money for them. So sometimes I do that, and that helps the environment. And I also monitor my showers so they're like 10 minutes long because then you save the whales. I love the whales so much. They're so cute. And yeah, also I like measure the temperature in my house. So yeah, that's what I do to help with climate change.
Okay, that's great, Courtney, but what is climate change?
Um, well, I know the polar bears are dying, and they're so cute because the world is heating up and the Arctic is melting, and it's just so sad because polar bears are so adorable.
Okay, thank you, Courtney. Well, as you can see, 14 months ago, I was clueless about what climate change was. Why was I so clueless? Because I had no instruction about what climate change was or how it was affecting my environment. I had no teacher telling me about air rights or carbon emissions. All I thought was that polar bears were cute and that they were dying.
Well, I also know you should recycle to save the world. Duh.
Yes, that's great, but climate change is more than recycling. Let's talk a little bit about what educational institutions are doing about climate change to educate students like you, Courtney.
Fine, but I highly doubt you're going to find anything more than I know already.
Sadly, you are correct. This quarter, I was challenged to find 5 scholarly articles about climate change in a class. It took me about 5 hours to find these scholarly articles, and none of them were at a national level. How sad. Also, from my research findings, I only found 2 universities that are talking about climate change in classes, and that was Hawaii and Kentucky University. For example, at Hawaii University of Marine Biology, students are researching what water quality is doing to sea urchins and their fertilization and embryo development. So basically, what will happen to the water when climate change happens and how that will affect sea urchins and how they live. That's great, but it's only one class at one university. And even worse, there's only one article that I found about high school and climate change. And where the article I found out about high school and climate change was in Colorado, and there were 56 high school and middle school students discussing climate change. They were making videos that were about 5 minutes long about local climate change problems in their area, such as glaciers melting or drought. This may sound like a lot of students, but 56 students compared to the 3.3 million students in the United States is a very small amount. It is great, though, that Colorado is at least doing something to educate students about climate change.
Wow, I had no clue sea urchins were affected by climate change. I wish I could have taken a class like that in high school.
I wish you could too, but unfortunately you couldn't. Did you know that there's people talking about there are people being affected by climate change today?
No, I didn't. Tell me more.
Well, there are people being affected by climate change today. And I was also, in this class that I also took this fall, I was also challenged to find 5 scholarly articles about a climate topic. Each person in the class had to find a different climate topic. Each person had to have a different one too, and I was surprised by how many different people had different topics. I was having a hard time finding one myself. I didn't know there were so many things about climate change and so many people being affected.
Wow, I had no clue that many places were affected by climate change.
Yeah, there is. But for the sake of time, I only researched one place and one topic. My hot topic was human security in the Middle East and what they're doing about climate change with water.
Okay, that's great. Tell me more.
Okay, I will, but remember that I'm not a professional or I don't know a lot about this. I just researched 5 articles and I'm just stating what I know.
Okay, well, quit lollygagging and tell me about it.
Okay, so I'll start. The Middle East, the biggest thing I found out about the Middle East and climate change is that Arab states don't recognize that climate change is affecting their economy. This is also kind of ironic because the Middle East is the most likely to be affected by climate change in the future and is the most volatile. And I do understand that if you're at war, you don't necessarily want to consider climate change. It is not the first thing on your mind, but it is happening today in the Middle East. And one of the problems of climate change that they will be suffering from is drought. As you know, Courtney, the Middle East is very, very dry. In fact, the Middle East has the largest water deficit in the world, which is crazy. And on top of that, only 20% of that water is renewable. Why isn't anyone doing anything about this? Well, first of all, because the government doesn't recognize that climate change is affecting their economy. And second of all, it really isn't because people are packing up their bags and moving away from areas that don't have water and moving to areas that do. Trondolian puts this well in 2009 when he says, the literature on climate change and migration suggests increased water-related disputes and pressures for migration. This is great to think of because prior to 2010, there wasn't much on migration and climate change because in 2010, government officials recognized that climate change had to do with refugees, not just war. That was only 5 years ago. Wow. Yes, and only 5 years ago. How crazy is that? Also, climate refugees are still a threat in climate refugees in sub-Saharan Africa are still a threat to the Middle East, according to the IPCC report in 2011. How cool to think that this IPCC report, which is a report about predicting climate change, is not only just a report, but is also proven to be true. Something else the IPCC report is predicting for the next year in the Middle East is that precipitation will be increasing by 30%. That might sound great because hey, more water, but in fact, according to Hishami, the precipitation increase will reduce the water available in water aquatics, which are modeled behind me. Yeah, this is so heavy. There's so much going on in one small area. Is there any hope, Courtney? Courtney, I do think there is hope because we have scholars and engineers today trying to find solutions for climate change in the Middle East. For example, for the excess precipitation, as I mentioned earlier, Hashami has a new system that he invented that takes the groundwater from precipitation and recycles it, and that is also modeled behind me here. Also, another scholar that has come up with another idea is Antonoli, where he thinks that the Middle East should trade virtual water, which is water that other countries can create with the Middle East. Even though neither of these plans are currently taking action, this gives us hope because people do have solutions to their problem. And with these solutions, I hope that the Middle East will be able to take action and solve their climate change issues. Wow, I'm so glad you learned so much, Courtney, about climate change in such a small amount of time. Yeah, it is great. I'm glad I had a class here at WW where I could learn so much about climate change. I wish I could have learned more. I do too. Now I understand what you meant when you said I know nothing about climate change. I wish I could have learned so much more in high school so I would know even more today. That's exactly why I'm here, to help educational institutions realize that they need to educate students about climate change. Not only will this just educate students, but this will also give the world an opportunity for future solutions to climate change. Thank you.